Ladies and gentlemen, there are two kinds of people in the world. Those who wait for inspiration and those who chase it, create it, shape it with their bare hands. But what if I told you the greatest ideas don't just arrive? They are born out of silence, out of confusion, out of still moments when the world seems too noisy and our thoughts too scattered. I remember sitting once in complete stillness, staring at a blank page, not because I had nothing to say, but because I didn't know where to begin. And isn't that where we all start? With a desire to create, but without a direction, with passion in our hearts, but no roadmap in our hands? Whether you are a content creator, a teacher, a student, or simply someone with a story inside you, the act of brainstorming is not just about ideas. It is about unlocking a piece of yourself. It's about being brave enough to say, "This is what I want to share with the world." Today, let us explore how brainstorming video ideas is more than a task. It is a journey of creativity, authenticity, and impact. And maybe, just maybe, it's the start of something that can change not just your life, but the lives of those who watch you. Keynote 1. Understand the power of your voice. Before you even pick up a pen to jot down your video ideas, I want you to pause, not to hesitate, but to reflect. Reflect on the one thing that is often taken for granted, yet holds extraordinary power: your voice. Your voice is not just the sound that comes from your vocal cords. It is the sum of your experiences, the scars you've carried, the lessons you've learned, the dreams you nurture, and the courage you choose every single day to get back up when life knocks you down. It's your fingerprint on the world, invisible but unforgettable. When I first began speaking publicly, people asked me, "What makes you think people want to listen to your story?" And perhaps you've asked yourself a similar question. Why would anyone watch my videos? Why would my ideas matter? But here's the truth. Your voice has the power to light a fire in someone else's darkness. You may think you're just sharing a thought, but someone, somewhere, could be hearing a lifeline. And that's the beauty of creative communication. What starts as a whisper in your mind can become a roar in someone else's heart. We live in a world full of content. Billions of videos are uploaded every year. But do you know what cuts through the noise? Not flashy editing, not big production budgets. It's authenticity. It's the voice that isn't trying to be perfect, but is trying to be real. Before brainstorming video ideas, first ask yourself, what is the story I've been given that the world needs to hear? Because your life, your pain, your triumphs, those are not accidents. They are ingredients for something greater, and your voice is the vessel. Many people silence themselves before they even begin. They compare, they doubt, they fear judgment. But what if you reframed that fear? What if you saw your voice not as something to be evaluated, but as something to be offered? When you shift from self-consciousness to contribution, the ideas start flowing, not from pressure, but from purpose. Think of a child who speaks with no filter, no fear, just pure expression. That was once you. Somewhere along the way, life made you quiet your truth. But the spark is still there. Your voice is still there, waiting patiently to be used, not for validation, but for impact. Before brainstorming video ideas, sit with your story. Write down what moved you, what shaped you, what broke you, and what built you. These are the foundations of content that connects. Because people don't just want to be entertained, they want to be seen. And when you use your voice, your true voice, you give others permission to be seen too. Muniba Mazari once said, "When you share your story, and it doesn't make you cry, that means you are healed." But she also believed that healing is not a destination, it's a process. And sometimes, your voice is part of that healing, not just for you, but for those who hear it. So today, before you start brainstorming ideas for your next video, take a moment to honor your voice. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need a perfect script. What you need is the courage to speak, to create, and to trust that your voice is enough. Because it is. And because someone out there is waiting, not for a perfect video, but for your voice. Keynote 2. Identify your core message. Before a brush meets the canvas, an artist must first understand what they want to express. In the same way, before you even press record or write a video script, you must pause, breathe, and ask yourself, What is the message I want to leave behind? Because content without a message is like a journey without a destination. You may keep moving, but you'll never know where you're going. Your core message is not a catchy line, nor is it a trend you chase. It is a deeply rooted truth, a value, a realization that you carry in your heart. This message is born from your life experiences, your struggles, your victories, and even your wounds. And most often, it is shaped not in moments of comfort, but in moments of pain. When I speak today, whether it's on a stage or through a screen, my message has always been clear. You are not broken, you are beautifully whole, just the way you are. But it took me years of suffering, silence, and reflection to understand that this was my core. And once I found it, every word I spoke, every video I created, became a reflection of that message. So how do you find yours? Start by going inward. What has life taught you that no book ever could? What is the one thing you would want to tell the world, even if no one clapped, even if no one watched, even if no one liked or shared? That is the beginning of your message. Don't look for something that sounds impressive. Look for something that feels true. Your core message could be about resilience, about faith, about self-worth, about kindness, about creativity, or even about healing from loss. It doesn't have to be something dramatic. It just has to be something you believe in with your whole heart. Because when you believe in it, your audience will feel it. And remember this, people may forget your words, but they will never forget how your message made them feel. When you identify your core message, brainstorming video ideas becomes not only easier, but purposeful. Instead of scrambling for topics, you start building a library of stories, questions, lessons, and reflections, all aligned with your message. You no longer chase validation, you chase impact, and that changes everything. But don't expect this clarity to come overnight. Sometimes, it takes writing pages in your journal. Sometimes, it takes silence. Sometimes, it takes asking yourself the hardest questions. What broke me? What healed me? What am I still learning? Those questions are not easy, but they are necessary, because you cannot give what you haven't yet found within yourself. And once you find your message, protect it. There will be voices around you, telling you to change it to fit algorithms, to match trends, to follow the crowd. But always remember, your message is your soul's signature. If you lose it, you lose the essence of your content. Be open to evolving, but never compromise on your truth. So today, I invite you not just to brainstorm video ideas, I invite you to brainstorm your message. What is that one truth the world needs to hear from you? And when you speak, let that truth echo in every frame, every word, and every silence, because in the end, the most powerful videos are not the ones that go viral, they are the ones that go deep. Keynote 3. Know your audience, but stay true to yourself. Before you press the record button, or write your script, pause for a moment, and ask yourself, who am I speaking to, and why? This may seem like a simple question, but in the world of content creation, it is one of the most powerful. Knowing your audience means understanding their struggles, their dreams, their fears, and their hopes. But here's the catch. In knowing them, don't lose sight of yourself. Too often, we get caught up in algorithms, trends, and likes. We start molding our content to fit a mold, one that wasn't made for us, and slowly, the voice that was once authentic becomes an echo of what we think people want to hear. But the truth is, the audience isn't looking for another copy, they're longing for something real. And that real is you. When you brainstorm video ideas, yes, ask yourself what your audience needs. Are they seeking motivation? Do they want to learn something new? Are they hurting and looking for hope? Dive deep into their world. Be empathetic. Be curious. Step into their shoes, not just to teach them, but to walk with them. But don't let that empathy become a performance. Muniba Mazari once said, "Don't die before your death." And that includes the slow death of your originality. Don't let yourself be buried beneath the expectations of others. The moment you start compromising your voice to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one, not even yourself. You see, authenticity doesn't mean being perfect. It means being transparent. It means letting your audience see not just your strengths, but also your scars. Because your scars tell stories that your strengths never could. When you stay true to yourself, your ideas may not always be popular, but they will always be powerful. Now here's where the magic happens. When you understand your audience deeply, and you remain deeply grounded in your truth, your video content becomes a bridge, a space where your world meets theirs. It becomes a conversation, not a monologue. It becomes human, not just informational. Let's say you're making a video about overcoming failure. Sure, you can share tips and techniques, but imagine instead sharing a story about the time you fell, when you were told you weren't good enough, the tears you shed, the lessons you learned, and then bring it back to them. Invite them into that space. That's when your audience doesn't just watch your video, they feel it, they remember it, they carry it with them. And if ever you find yourself thinking, but what if they don't like it? Remember this, your job isn't to be liked by everyone. Your job is to be honest, speak your truth with compassion, share your message with humility, and trust that the right people, the ones who need your message, will find you. So yes, study your audience, know what they care about, let that knowledge guide your brainstorming, but don't let it rewrite your voice, because your voice, your honest, imperfect, bold voice, is the very thing the world is waiting to hear. And always remember, you don't have to be extraordinary to make an impact. You just have to be real. And being real begins with staying true to who you are, even when the world asks you to be someone else. Keynote 4. Embrace vulnerability in your creativity. Let me ask you something. What is the one thing we are most afraid of showing, yet most deeply drawn to in others? It's vulnerability. The cracks in our stories, the raw emotions behind our smiles, the struggles behind our victories. And when it comes to brainstorming creative ideas, especially for videos, vulnerability is not a weakness. It is your greatest strength. You see, when we sit down with a pen and paper, or in front of a camera, we often wear masks. We ask ourselves, what will people like? What's trending? What's safe? But my friend, if you only chase what is safe, your ideas may never soar. If you only create what is comfortable, your work may never truly connect. The most powerful video ideas are not born from perfection. They are born from pain, from courage, and from truth. Think of the stories that have moved you, the videos that brought tears to your eyes, or lit a spark in your heart. Were they flawless? No, but they were real. Real struggles, real triumphs, real emotions. Because vulnerability doesn't just inspire creativity, it is creativity. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable in your brainstorming process, you give yourself permission to explore the parts of you that you usually keep. Maybe it's the anxiety you felt growing up. Maybe it's the dream you abandoned because someone told you it wasn't practical. Maybe it's the moment when you hit rock bottom and had to claw your way back up. These moments, these deeply personal, uncomfortable, human moments, are your creative gold. But I know, it's not easy. We fear judgment. We fear rejection. We fear being misunderstood. But here's the truth. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You just need to be felt by someone. Your story, in all its vulnerability, could be the very thing someone else needs to hear. To not give up. Let me share something with you. There was a time when I didn't think I had anything worth sharing. I thought my brokenness made me weak. I thought silence was safer. But when I finally dared to speak about my struggles, the pain, the heartbreak, the failures, that's when people listened. That's when the walls broke. That's when healing began, not just for them, but for me too. And that is the power you carry too. When you brainstorm video ideas, don't just ask yourself what will impress. Ask yourself what will heal, what will resonate, what will help someone else feel seen. Don't be afraid to brainstorm ideas that seem too raw or too emotional. Often, it is the rawness that brings clarity, the emotion that sparks action, the honesty that builds connection. So be bold enough to ask, what am I afraid to say? What parts of my story still ache? What truth am I holding back? And then write it down, speak it out, shape it into a story. That's where your next video idea might come from. Not from a trend, but from your truth. Remember this, it is not your polished version that will change lives. It is your vulnerable self, brave, messy, and real. So the next time you sit down to brainstorm, don't look away from your pain. Lean into it. Don't silence your heart. Listen to it. Your vulnerability is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your most powerful ideas. Keynote 5. Think in stories, not just concepts. When you sit down to brainstorm your next video idea, don't just think about topics. Don't get lost in the abstract web of concepts like motivation, success, or growth. Instead, think in stories, because it's not the idea that touches hearts, it's the journey behind it. In my life, I've met many people with brilliant ideas, powerful philosophies, and revolutionary thoughts, but the ones who made me pause, reflect, and even shed a tear were the ones who told me a story of struggle, a story of survival, a story of standing back up when the world gave them every reason to stay down. You see, stories are the language of the human soul. When you brainstorm your next video, ask yourself, what story do I want to tell? What real-life experience shaped this idea for me? Maybe you want to talk about resilience, but instead of listing 5 tips on how to be resilient, why not share the moment when you first learned to stand on your own, emotionally or mentally? Let people into that room where you cried alone. Let them feel that silence before the strength emerged. It takes courage to share your story, but your story is your power. Think of every great speech you've heard, whether it's a TED Talk, a graduation address, or a YouTube video that went viral. It wasn't just educational, it was emotional. It carried the weight of a human experience. Maybe it made you laugh, maybe it made you cry, but most importantly, it made you feel. And that's what stories do. They bypass logic and touch the heart. Now, you might say, but I haven't experienced anything extraordinary. Let me stop you right there. You don't have to survive a plane crash, climb Mount Everest, or rise from the ashes of tragedy to tell a story. The most powerful stories often come from the most ordinary places. Maybe it's the day you failed an exam and felt like a disappointment, and how you turned that failure into fuel. Maybe it's how your mother's silent strength during hard times taught you resilience. Maybe it's a stranger who smiled at you when you needed it most. These stories, these small, raw, human moments, are what connect us. When you brainstorm video ideas, start with a story. Ask yourself, what moment in my life taught me something I'll never forget? What pain did I turn into power? What lesson came to me the hard way? What journey am I still walking? Because even if your story isn't finished, it is already meaningful. And there is someone out there, maybe a teenager in another country, or a mother sitting in her kitchen late at night, who needs to hear it just the way you tell it. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's a bridge. It builds trust, it shows courage, it tells your audience, you're not alone. I've been there. Keynote 6. Create with purpose, not for perfection. When we sit down to brainstorm video ideas, we often find ourselves chasing perfection. We want the idea to be flawless, the script to be eloquent, the visuals to be cinematic, and the delivery to be pitch perfect. But in that pursuit of perfection, many of us abandon the very ideas that could have made a difference. Let me share something with you. Perfection is an illusion, but purpose is a compass. When I think of creativity, I don't think of flawless execution. I think of honesty. I think of courage. I think of someone sitting in a quiet room, scribbling on paper, with shaky hands, trying to express something real. That is where true content is born, not from pristine conditions, but from messy authenticity. And when you brainstorm ideas, let that be your starting point. We all have something to say. We all carry stories within us that the world needs to hear. But too often, we silence ourselves because we feel our ideas are not good enough. The background isn't perfect. The camera quality isn't great. We don't have a full script. Or maybe we fumble while talking. And so we wait for the perfect time, the perfect setup, the perfect inspiration. But while we wait for perfection, purpose quietly slips away. Let me ask you, why do you want to create this video? Is it to educate someone, to empower someone, to make someone feel seen, to change a life, even if it's just one? If your reason is rooted in purpose, then that alone makes your idea valuable. The world doesn't need another perfect piece of content. It needs more real content. It needs videos that speak from the heart, not from a script. It needs stories that are imperfect, but powerful. It needs creators who are not afraid to show up as they are. Let me give you an example. Imagine a young girl battling with self-esteem issues, watching your video about self-worth. Even if you recorded it with a basic phone, sitting in your bedroom, the lighting may not be ideal, but your message is clear, and your heart is visible. You think, It's just a small video, but for her, it's a mirror that reflects hope. That's the power of purpose. When brainstorming your video ideas, don't ask yourself, what will go viral? Ask instead, what will create value? Don't worry about how others might judge your production. Focus on how your content might make someone feel less alone, more understood, more courageous. Creating with purpose means allowing your humanity to show. It means making peace with imperfections and moving forward anyway. You may stumble on words, you may not have the best gear, but your message, the soul of your video, will resonate because it came from an honest place. The truth is, some of the most impactful videos in the world were never the most polished ones. They were the most purposeful. They came from people who dared to show their scars instead of hiding them. People who didn't wait to be perfect to start. They just started with love, with intention, and with a burning desire to make a difference. So the next time you sit down to brainstorm, replace the question, is this good enough, with is this true to who I am? Because in the end, your video doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. It needs to be yours, and it needs to be created with purpose. Thank you.